Learn to take your floral drawings from simple doodles to a larger, more detailed arrangement in today's tutorial. Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Shada Campbell and this is part 3 of our little series on floral doodles and illustration. In parts 1 and 2, we worked through some different floral drawings, starting really simple and getting a little more detailed. And today we're going to take everything we've learned and work those floral doodles into a larger, more intricate piece so that you can really illustrate flowers as a larger drawing. Now, if you haven't seen the first ones, don't worry about it. You can totally jump in here, but I will link a playlist with videos 1 and 2 so that you can catch up on those if you like. The art that I'm going to create today will be available as a print on Patreon so that you can print it out for your own journal or whatever you like. And patrons of the channel, there is now a new tier that you may want to upgrade to. We have launched a monthly art class. It's live. You can ask questions and I'll give answers. So check that out after today's video. Okay, let's get started. In the first video of this series, we did these very two-dimensional mini floral doodles. They're a lot of fun to draw, whether you're just getting started or you're a seasoned illustrator. And then in the second video of the series, we took our floral doodles to the next level. And you can see there's a little more dimension and perspective, a bit more detail and line shading. So we've moved from really simple and sweet to still minimal and simple, but just with a touch more detail. And today we're going to combine both of those into an arrangement. So what I'm using is watercolor paper. This is 90-pound cold pressed. 90-pound is very thin. It's actually not great for painting on. What I tend to use it for is printing. If I want to print one of my watercolors that I've digitized, it's great for that. And then drawing. And what I'm doing is just ripping all the sides using a ruler so I get this really nice, perfectly imperfect edge. And now I'm ready to get started with my floral drawing. So I've clipped the page down, I've got my mechanical pencil, and the first thing I do is a guide. I'll place circles where I want to place the main flowers. So I'm not just going in cold and starting to draw. And now that I know I've got these 3 areas where I want to place a flower, I can look at my other doodles and say, okay, which flowers would I like to use today? So if you're doing these in your sketchbook, you can always use them as reference material. And the first one that jumps out at me is I think I'd like to do a big flower like the poppy or peony in the middle here. So I place the stamen and then I'm going to place these big floppy petals. Remember in the second video we talked about perspective a little bit and depth. If you want to go back and watch that, you can. And it's all about setting up these guides. I'm going to do the Gerber daisy down below, and then I actually think I'll do some berries, like a very tight cluster of berries up in this 3rd area. So those are my 3 main plants, the daisy, the peony, and the berries. And then I'll place some stems with a few leaves. And I might do a couple smaller leaves in behind. So that's how this is coming together. And now all I need to do, now that I've placed these 3 main flowers with their stems and leaves, is to add some smaller flowers in behind. And for that, I just did a really simple branch on the left. And then over here on the right, I'm doing these tiny little wax flowers. And wax flowers is another one that we covered in the second video. And then when this all came together, I decided I didn't really like the way that flower was looking, but it's so simple you can erase. You've still got this perfect circular area where you can place the flower. And I just wanted to kind of redo those petals. And you can see now that one petal is turned up, and I think it looks a lot more natural. For more guidance, drawing petals and creating depth within your florals, watch the second video in this series. Okay, so now we've got our peony here. I like the way it looks in the center. It's got that big stamen and the floppy petals. We have our wax flowers, and I'll just look at my reference material. If you look at the reference, all the flowers are going in a different direction. Some are facing away, they're on an angle, and I forgot to include those side profile wax flowers in this one. So it's nice to look at the reference material and say, oh, I should do some side profile wax flowers on this one. So that's why doing these practice sketches is so important, because we use them as our reference, our guide. Now that my drawing I'm pretty happy with it, I'm going to take my Pigma Micron and I'm going to start going over everything in pen. And you'll see when I go over the petals, I shake that pen just ever so slightly so that they're not too smooth. I don't want anything to look too smooth or cartoon-like. It just won't look natural. To draw the stamen in the center of the peony, I like to do some lines. I sort of double up the lines and make these scribbles. Keep it quite loose and messy. And then going around the petals of the daisy, you want to do the same thing where you're wiggling that pen a little, and don't make the ends of the petals too smooth. That's another trick. You want them to be a little ragged, a little square in some cases, and that will give you a much more natural looking flower. I'll continue to trace over the leaves and stems with my Pigma Micron, and then as we go over the wax flower illustrations, you can see how I'm achieving a little bit of depth or perspective by making the petals different lengths. Some of the flowers have 4 equal-sized petals, while other ones the front petal is much shorter, making the flower appear as if it is turning towards or away from the viewer. And then over here we have our berries, and I want to give them all a bit of a dotting or lines on the top. That just really makes them pop and come to life. And I'll add some small leaves to their stems as well. When you are going over everything in pen, it's always at a certain point you're like, I just have too much pencil, I just need to get rid of it and see what I have here. And with the pencil removed, you can kind of see where you need that extra little leaf to poke through. And then inevitably I'll come back in with pencil and say, okay, I'm gonna add just some more little leaves here, or we need one more little wax flower down here. And then I'll go over that with pen, and this is sort of how the illustration finally comes together. I'm adding just some tiny leaves where I need them, and then some of these really tiny little leaves that I've done, I want to darken to create a bit of contrast within the piece as well. Okay, I'm almost done, and before I finish, I wanted you to take a look at the practice work I did. Now, the piece on the left here that we're creating, it could be done at this point. It looks great, we've got some contrast, it's this beautiful minimal line drawing. While the one on the right is a similar illustration with a lot more line shading. And that tends to be my style. I like to add that line shading once I'm done the illustration. So it's totally up to you. You could be done now, you could add a little more line shading, you could add a lot more line shading. For that process, it's nice to grab a smaller Pigma Micron, the finer nib like the 005. I use the 03 for the body of this illustration, and now I'll take that 005, the really tiny nib, and I'll add a bit more lines. Starting with some that I would consider part of the illustration. With the peonies or poppies, I like to add these lines to the petals to show the movement and shape of each petal. I also like to continue adding contrast to my illustration by darkening the leaves, and I'll darken them by adding a lot of densely placed lines. And then for the Gerber daisy, again, putting some lines on the petals helps show their texture and really bring them to life. A few lines on the side of the berries indicates that the berries are rounded and that there would be a little bit of shadow. And finally, you can come back to that center flower and add some more line shading to show shadow where the petals meet, anywhere where the light might not fall, like near the center of the flower. And then that's it. That's my final step for this illustration. And as I said, how much line shading you add is totally up to you. So if you're kind of not for it, or it seems a little too finicky, just skip it. I'm super happy with the way this turned out, and I hope that it's helped you realize how you can take these simple floral doodles and turn them into a floral arrangement that's perfect for putting in your bullet journal or on a birthday card or just about anything. Remember, you can go back and watch videos 1 and 2 to build up your floral drawing skills. And head over to Patreon to find some helpful worksheets that go with videos 1 and 2. For today's Patreon bonus content, you can download and print the floral design that I just illustrated, so nab that, patrons. Thank you guys so much for watching today. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you soon with a new tutorial.